Why is Mark always holding back even when his life is on the line? During the Invincible War, Mark refused to go and protect his mother and younger brother, even though Eve just had a broken leg. Why does Mark repeat his mistakes over and over before learning from them? The answer is simple. It's because Mark is written just like a real person. And let me tell you something. Every single person on this planet is a complex blend of feelings, germs, and emotions. Mark is modeled to represent that in some of the best ways I have ever seen in fictional storytelling. So today, let me tell you why Mark Grayson is probably one of the most complex characters in all of fiction. Something that is made abundantly clear in the show Invincible is just how Mark, the main protagonist, wants to be a superhero just like his father. This is no news to anyone who has watched the series or read the comics. I mean, Mark's infatuation is evident, especially at the beginning of the show and at the beginning of the comics. Whether it be him reading comics about his dad while on the toilet, or his wide-eyed fascination upon learning where he actually comes from, which is of course the planet Viltrum. And I know you might be asking yourself, you might be thinking, how is any of what I'm saying right now relevant to what I said in the intro? Well, things like character traits, behaviors, emotional patterns, and a whole bunch of other things that I'm gonna talk about in this video shape the way an individual thinks, reacts, feels, and interacts with the world around them. In the case of Mark Grayson, his personality is a mix of an ambition to be a superhero. Think of it this way. Mark has the determination to be just like his father, and at the same time he has the emotional vulnerability that comes from being a human. When you look at the other Viltrumites, you look at Thrag, you look at Anissa, you look at Conquest, they don't have that emotional vulnerability. They could watch their comrades get killed right in front of them and they're just gonna be like, he was too weak to hang with us anyways. As a Viltrumite, if you get killed in battle, it just means you deserve to die. And you don't gotta take my word for it. You could ask the Viltrumite, you could ask this particular Viltrumite if the other Viltrumites care that he had his stomach open like an iPhone 16 unboxing. And that's really what it is. They believe in this system of the strong should rule the weak. Everything they do is modeled after their strength. But that begs the question, what is Mark's personality at this point in the story? Oh shit, that rhymed. For Mark in season 1 of the show, being a superhero like his father is what mattered to him the most. And that was essentially his identity. And one thing with the show is that Mark continues to change every single time. You just need to give him enough time and you're gonna watch him change. And it's so fascinating. It's really like watching people. Sometimes you don't even notice when people change. You just start to see different behaviors, different things they say, you know? And the really interesting part here is what happened when he finally gained his powers. And reality did not match his expectations at all. He starts to spiral into self-doubt. And from this point on, from this point where he finally got his powers, Mark grapples with the pressure of living up to his father's reputation, and he got his reality check in the form of a fantastic slap. Literally, the moment Nolan gave him a gut check, it shattered all the illusions Mark had about heroism, the fear, the realization of just how unprepared he was. You could see it all over his face. This insecurity is further elaborated when he tells Todd, a high school bully, to continuously punch him. Now, this next scene, I really want you guys to watch it very, very carefully, okay? This is one of the most important scenes in the entire season 1. Mark was practicing his flying and landings, right? And right then, Debbie walks up to him and tells him, Mark, you gotta go sleep. It's getting late. It's already late. Mark insists he wants to keep practicing while highlighting his own shortcomings in his ability. This shows that Mark has some level of self-awareness. Again, it's probably because of the gut check. He knew he wasn't ready to be a superhero. And for someone whose identity is centered around the concept of being a hero, this was something he needed to fix. So just watch how he interacts with Debbie.
Mark, you need to sleep.
I need to practice.
Honey, it's the middle of the night. I have work tomorrow, you have school. Get inside right now.
Make me.
Does that make you feel strong?
So Debbie doubles down and tells him he needs to go to bed, and Mark tells her to make him go to bed. I mean, up until this point, Mark wasn't the type of person who would say or do something like this. And that's when Debbie asks him, does that make you feel strong? Now, obviously, that was a fantastic line from Debbie. But anyway, this line basically diffused Mark. Debbie is an excellent person when it comes to handling conflict without throwing hands or using slurs like me. I think it's something you have to just learn if you have no superpower superpowers and everyone around you has superpowers, you know you can't box, so you just gotta use your words. You got no choice unless you want to get murked, unless you want to get slimed. So this is something Mark is gonna pick up later, you know, using his words to diffuse conflict, but more on that later. So after she goes on to ask Mark, you know, does this make you feel strong? They go on to have a heart-to-heart. They have a very, very good dialogue where Mark goes on to share the insecurities we have been talking about. He goes on to share them with Debbie, and that's when she reassures Mark that he only needs to be himself and not Omni-Man, and that becomes extremely important. Before I get into why that is important, there are two things you need to know before we move forward. Nolan is very confrontational, while Debbie is more resilient, and these are two traits that Mark learns to balance out. He learns how to be more confrontational, and these are two traits that Mark learns how to use, because at some point in the story you're gonna see that Mark is very confrontational. He's gonna just go in there and just box all the time. And some other times you're gonna see that he is more of a dialogue person. He's trying to talk you out of being a bad guy and whatnot. But one thing he learns how to do is know when to use his fist and know when to use his words, but that happens much later. Anyway, when he later meets Nolan, he asks Nolan to hit him because they were in this training session and Mark wants to test himself. He wants to confirm if his new strength aligns with his expectations. But Nolan takes the pacifist route and opts for dialogue instead, telling Mark he is strong and he will get stronger, and he is. Before I go further, let's look at Mark's personality as a whole right now at this point in the story. Mark Grayson is a kid who just got everything he wanted. He spent his whole life dreaming about being a superhero like his father. But now that he is actually a super person, it's not living up to the fantasy that he had in his head. The gap between expectation and reality is hitting him really hard. It is akin to a lot of us, and if I'm being honest, I thought going to the university was gonna be such a great experience. I thought it was gonna be, freedom and doing what you want when you want. And when I finally got into the university, it wasn't the same. It wasn't what I had in mind. That's just one of the many moments that I had, this great eye opener that, reality isn't always what you expect it to be. And that's exactly what happened here with Mark. Mark's identity at this point is entirely wrapped up around the idea of being strong. And not just being strong like Nolan. But the problem is he doesn't feel that strength yet. Instead, he feels lost, insecure, and the strangest thing is he still wants to keep going. He wants to get better. And get this, he wants to get better even though he might neglect everything else. I need you to keep that in mind as we go forward, because this was what episode 1 established. And in the coming episodes, we see something very annoying that Mark keeps doing, which is constantly holding his full strength back. And I noticed this when the Flaxons returned and managed to somehow restrain Mark. Mark does not break free until Adam Eve is in danger. This made Mark use more strength than he had previously been using. In fact, he used so much strength that the feedback from him lifting off the ground sent everyone in the area flying. And this wasn't such a great thing, but it's one of the key differences between Mark and Nolan at this point. Mark is very motivated by emotions. How does that make him different from Nolan? This is very normal for people to do. Not to mention he was still a teenager at this point. Robot even goes on to confirm this. Anyways, moving on from all that shit, Mark starts to realize he needs to find balance between being a superhero and being a regular person, which is also an interesting development because up until this moment, like I established before, Mark wanted to be a superhero. That's all he wants to do. But he has realized that he has to be a superhero and a regular person. He still has to go to school. He still has to have regular friends. He still has to meet people that he's never gonna tell his identity, and he needs to, the whole 9 yards, okay? So he needs to find balance because he was putting in too much effort trying to be like Omni-Man, trying to be a superhero like Omni-Man. But that begs the question, what type of superhero was he? And what type of regular person was he? As a regular person, he was the type of guy who was never fully available, if you know what I'm saying. He was never really there 100% of the time. Sometimes you meet him in person and, he's visibly upset or visibly sad because of something that happened while he was out doing, hero work. And he can't tell you why he's sad or angry or why he was unavailable for, 6 hours at a time. You know what I'm saying? And I will get into how it was kind of affecting his relationships, but, I don't know if I'll get into that. Maybe I will. I don't know. I'm still writing the script while I'm recording this. But Mark, he just wasn't that great of a normal person. He was just not really there. While as a superhero, he was this Omni-Man wannabe. He only wanted to do shit that was, bigger than life. He was like Dwayne Johnson. He was like The Rock. He doesn't really care about the little guy. He just wants to be, up there, with the biggest where the biggest problems are, he wants to be there. So if it's a meteorite that's gonna wipe out the entirety of Earth, that's where he wants to be. That's what he wants to be, destroying. He doesn't really care for, the old woman getting robbed down the street. That's not his business. That the police can handle it. That's the type of superhero he was. But why was he that type of superhero? Again, it's because of Omni-Man. He wanted to be like Omni-Man. If you watch when I'll get into something real quick. I need to talk about this. So everything changes for Mark when he is approached by this muscle dude. I'm sorry, I can't remember his name. He has a really forgettable name. So this muscle guy that works for Machine Head. Machine Head is this billion-dollar drug trafficker that is oppressing a whole city. And this, guy that works for him needs Mark's help to take him down because the guy is really powerful and whatnot. So Mark refuses to, even listen to what the guy has to say at first. The guy has to do a lot of convincing for him to get Mark to help him. And what I find interesting about this is he was really contemplating helping this guy and a bunch of other people, because this problem isn't a big problem, at least for him. In his perspective, it wasn't that big of a problem. So why should he waste his time doing this when he could be stopping an alien invasion? You know what I'm saying? That's the type of hero Mark was. When he goes on to present the idea of saving or helping this guy to help everyone and take down Machine Head, Omni-Man says no. He says it's not worth your time or something. I can't remember, but he did say something about helping them. And remember, this is the guy that Mark is trying to be like. But Mark does something interesting. He goes to help them, and it was because of his mom. His mom was the one who convinced him to go help those people. And when he does, he gets absolutely demolished by Battle Beast. Samson and Monster Girl also got sent to the Gulag because of him, because they wanted to save Mark. So they also got destroyed, right? So after waking up from a 6-day coma and being discharged, Mark goes to meet up Adam Eve. And Eve tells Mark how she wants to be the type of hero that focuses on humanitarian shit, like providing food for starving people, stopping natural disasters, and maybe even finding you a girlfriend. Who knows? And you see what the story's doing here? It is showing Mark what he could be doing. He could be doing shit like this. He could be helping people down to the micro scale. I mean, not exactly the same way Adam Eve does it, but you get what I'm saying. And while Eve was talking about all this, Mark makes a comment that alludes to him not particularly being fixated on bigger than life superhero shit anymore, because he felt guilty from Monster Girl and Samson almost dying, and I guess that's really it. Later along the line, Mark starts to, overcompensate for living a double life. It's just like I established before, he was this type of nigga that wasn't always there, and he was under the impression that his girlfriend did not know who he was, that his girlfriend did not know he was a superhero. And at this point in the story, there is a shit ton of character development. If you've been listening to the whole video, you already know that Mark from season 1 episode 1 as a person is not the same person in episode 5 or episode 6 or episode 7 in the same season. Mark went from an insecure version of Omni-Man to a slightly more confident hero who wants to care for more people and who is emotional, but he's scared of using lethal force even when it is necessary. And we see just how much Mark has grown in the final episode of season 1. You see, in that episode, Nolan proposes that the life of, Viltrumites is more significant than that of human beings, mostly because human beings are weak, human beings don't live that long compared to Viltrumites. And humans are just, basically killing themselves and doing a lot of dumb shit on this big blue planet. But Mark completely tosses those ideas out the window, okay? And despite the physical onslaught and witnessing the catastrophic loss of lives, Mark's resolve remains unshaken. This is crazy. He continues to appeal to Nolan's humanity, reminding him of the love and experiences they've shared as a family. And this confrontation not only showcases Mark's physical resilience, because he did try to fight Omni-Man, but this episode also shows Mark's emotional fortitude and his capacity for empathy, because Debbie is the resilient one. She doesn't use force to make people stop fighting. And at the end of the day, it was a combination of Mark's emotional resilience and his physical resilience that made Omni-Man not to trash Earth and kill him that very moment. Honestly, that's what it was. Because I told you guys, Mark is a mixture of both Debbie and Nolan. Mark's actions during this episode underscore his evolution into a hero who embodies compassion, integrity, and an unyielding sense of justice. His willingness to stand against his own father for the sake of humanity reflects a profound internalization of, the values that he has been imparted with from the good people around him, mostly his mother. And this episode does something that it's so good. right? It's so good it moves me to tears. This episode shows us that Mark has unlocked two things: a new ambition and a new fear. A new ambition to not be like his father, and a new fear to not be like his father. Ladies and gentlemen, this right here is peak writing, because this is what I mean. This is what I need when I'm reading or watching a fictional story. I need it to be this dynamic. The complexity in season 1 alone on just Mark's character, because I could do this type of video for like 8 other characters and it will still feel justified. This is what I mean, okay? So from trying your hardest to be like your father to being afraid of becoming like your father, this is peak fiction. I'm sorry, that's what it is. And that's what most of season 2 is about. I could go on season 2 and do another whole breakdown, but that's what most of season 2 was about. He still met his father in season 2. He had a whole conversation with him and he still didn't want to be like him, even though he did have some new understanding for him and did take on his stepbrother and whatnot. He still doesn't want to be like Nolan. But here's where it starts to get crazy. He tries not to be like his father, but in doing so, he starts to do things his father would have done. You start to see similarities in his actions with that of Nolan. And the reason for this, again, I don't really want to go too in depth with season 2 because the video is already long as it is, and I haven't even started talking about season 3. But in season 2, a lot of times Mark had emotional outbursts where he shouldn't have had those outbursts, but because he was holding a lot of anger in his heart and a lot of fear, he just couldn't help it at times and he just lashed out on people. And it comes to fruition when he killed Angstrom Levy. I'm sure everyone who watched how Angstrom died in quote would agree that he deserved it. But considering the bullshit philosophy Mark follows, which is every life is precious, every human life is precious, that wasn't the way to go about it, you know? I also didn't mention, you know, him and Cecil's back and forth that much. I think I should have talked about him and Cecil's back and forth. I think I'll talk about it in another video. Let me know if you guys want me to cover whether Cecil was right or Mark was right. Just let me know what you guys think, because a lot of people like to shit on Cecil and say Cecil was, you know, an asshole and he had no right to do this and that and this. But let's be honest, he does everything he does for the interest of humanity. Okay, so if you guys want a video like that, just let me know down in the comment section. And while we're here, if you enjoyed the video this far, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. It really helps us out. We really appreciate it. So let's get back into the video.
What the fuck? Hi, sorry. It's okay. I'm in.
Now that we've come this far, we must address the elephant in the room: Mark's adamant refusal to kill evil people. I'll use an example: the Mahler twins. They've killed tons of people, but whenever Mark or any of the heroes defeats them, they put them in detention. And what happens next? They escape time after time after time. And it's not just the Mahler twins. Other villains, like even Dr. Seismic, we saw that he almost killed all the heroes. And this could have been prevented if they just killed these niggas. The dumb philosophy that all life is precious, I think it is only used in fictional stories to portray a point, and sometimes that point is non-existent. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Batman. But realistically, I don't think any real human being believes that. I think Mark's refusal to kill serves two purposes in the story. The first purpose is to contradict the elimination of the black and white fallacy, also known as the false dilemma fallacy. And the second is Mark's overwhelming fear of being like his father, which I have already explained, but I'm still gonna explain. But first, a false dilemma, or what I call the black and white fallacy. I'm sure that term has been used by someone else, but I'm gonna steal it. I don't care. Anyways, the false dilemma is a logical fallacy that happens when a situation is presented as having only two opposing options, when in reality there are more alternate options that exist. Throughout the course of Invincible, Mark is faced with the idea that killing is bad, and if you don't kill anyone, you have the moral high ground. But if you listen to what I just said, you would see that the beautiful thing here is Mark himself is a walking, talking contradiction. He oversimplifies the complex moral landscape into binary absolutes of good versus absolute evil. He does this by labeling people like Cecil as evil, as absolute evil or bad, because they are morally ambiguous. Even when Oliver did the world a favor by killing the Mahler twins, Mark put Oliver through such a hard time. It's the same twins that have killed so many people, bro. And I think this also goes to show that he is not a very simple person, because he is trying to eliminate the false dilemma thing while being a contradiction himself. I don't know if you guys are catching my drift right now, but I guess we could talk about that another time. Anyways, at this point in the story, Mark is seriously struggling with the use or the non-use of lethal force. He begins to confront scenarios where lethal force seems almost unavoidable, which really challenged his black and white views of heroism. And he quickly learns that being a good role model for Oliver is not that easy. Not to mention, he started dating Eve at this point, and he is facing so many other responsibilities. Some are new to him, some are responsibilities he has had before. But again, it's the challenge of being a hero and being a regular person. But everything changes during and after the Invincible War. Before we go forward, I would need you guys to remember what I stated at the beginning of the video. First and foremost, before I start to get into the meat of it, I think we need to cut Mark some slack, especially with the Eve stuff, especially with him sitting in the hospital with Eve while, you know, people were dying or whatever. Yes, he did not go out to continue fighting, but honestly, I think he was just really tired. Yes, that sounds like a bad excuse for letting people die, but just hear me out, okay? He had to deal with the death of Powerplex's wife and son, and all that was on his conscience, even though he shouldn't feel guilty for that. So he was a victim as much as they were, but at the end of the day, he put that blame on himself. He also put the death of Powerplex's sister on his conscience as well. And to top it all off, he watched alternate versions of himself trash the whole world. That alone allowed him to see the potential darkness within him, and it raises questions about the essence of his character, and not to mention the overwhelming fear of not wanting to be like his dad, only to realize that every other version of him became exactly like his dad. Now, I'm not saying all these things make him blameless, you know. I still think he can be scrutinized, but I think having this in mind allows you to channel your blame properly. If you want to point fingers, at least you need to understand the full story before you do, okay? Now that we're done with that, I think Mark's biggest personality growth presented itself at the end of the series. Some people might think that the only reason he decided he needs to be more brutal or lethal with certain threats is when he watched Eve and Oliver almost die. But honestly, I would say Mark's entire experience, coupled together with watching certain cycles repeat themselves, certain mistakes repeat themselves, and maybe even Cecil's influence, made him realize that a lot of these niggas need to be killed. A lot of these niggas shouldn't be spared or thrown into jail. They should just be executed on the spot. So the combination of all these things that I will soon get into made Mark realize this. His fight with Conquest made him realize that some people just want to slime other niggas just for the love of the game, nothing else. I'm sure questions like, what is the point of letting Conquest live, ran through Mark's head, because even from Conquest's dialogue, you know he was just a weapon made for killing. He was nothing more than that. Though Mark made it seem like he will only kill niggas that threaten his family, I don't think that's the case from how he spoke. As a matter of fact, when he was smashing Conquest's face in, Mark asked him a really funny question, and that question was, you know, in this mocking tone that made it seem like he just doesn't give a fuck no more. He's just ready to kill this nigga. He asked, are you having fun yet? And not just that, he went to check on Conquest's dead body after the fight to confirm that he was dead. He does not want another Levy incident to repeat itself. Plus, he doesn't trust Cecil, so yeah. Anyway, the encounter with Conquest and Levy really made Mark realize that there is no point in keeping niggas like them alive, which is by far the biggest development we have seen in Mark's character. Remember when he chose to stop Machine Head against his dad's will, or when he refused to join his dad and take over Earth? Those were decisions he made himself. By the end of season 3, Mark Grayson is almost unrecognizable compared to his season 1 and season 2 self. In season 1, he was an idealistic kid who wanted to be a hero, believing the good guys will never kill villains and no one should cross that line. In season 2, he started to see the cracks in his own beliefs, realizing that sparing dangerous people sometimes leads to terrible consequences. But even then, he still held on to the idea that you should not kill villains. But by season 3, that perspective has completely shifted. His experiences watching history repeat itself, seeing villains come back stronger and making the same mistakes over and over again, made him realize that people like Cecil were not totally wrong. Mark Grayson feels like a real person because his journey is deeply human. His personality feels like it is not exaggerated or one-dimensional. He doesn't just get angry and reckless after experiencing and loss. He internalizes things, questions himself, and carries guilt. If he experiences trauma, it isn't just forgotten in one or two or couple episodes. It lingers. His reaction to killing Levi wasn't just shock, it weighed on him, making him even more afraid of being like his dad. He started to think that he was his dad. But later, his fight with Conquest makes him confront the reality that some threats can't be left alive, making him rethink his entire moral stance. And that's how people grow, through repeated experiences and not just a single epiphany. Mark Grayson isn't just a superhero. He's someone struggling with morality, responsibility, and identity in ways that mirror real life growth. What makes him stand out from many fictional characters is he evolves in response to his experiences. And if you want to see another dynamic character that is arguably as good as Mark Grayson, you could watch our video on Ichigo right here. So thank you very much for watching. I hope I see you in the next one. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thank you.